CRP number 88, and this is going to be a recap of last night's UFC on ESPN Plus 10. I'm riding solo today. Our normal host, Miguel Iterati, is busy at the moment, and just some communication issues. We had some equipment issues earlier, and timing didn't work out for this. We got to get this out here. So I'm going to ride solo for this one. Recapping a little bit, I am confident that Miguel will be back in full force, bringing you odds, recaps, previews, everything throughout the week. But looking at this event, we had a big main event for the evening last night, big welterweight showdown between former lightweight contenders. Number 3 ranked welterweight Raphael Dos Anjos, former lightweight champion, took on rising contender Kevin Lee. And this ended up going into the 4th round, and we had RDA, longtime vet, former UFC lightweight champion, as I just previously mentioned, pulled off a 4th round submission of the Motown Phenom by a head and arm choke. And Kevin Lee is really kind of falling into the bust category. There was a lot of hype on him a few years ago. He went on a pretty good streak, ended up with a big submission in a main event fight against Michael Chiesa. It was kind of a controversial finish, but nevertheless, it was a good finish. And ended up in an interim title fight with Tony Ferguson for the interim lightweight title. Ended up gassing out, getting finished in the 3rd by Tony Ferguson, but he was young. A lot of people still had a lot of hype behind him. And there was always this kind of concern about him down there at lightweight, about he's a very big man for that division, and he was struggling to make the cut down to 55. And with age, it's only going to get even worse. So he was actually pleading for the UFC to make a 165-pound division, which I think is a topic for a different day, but it is very logical to not have 15-pound gaps between lightweight, welterweight, and middleweight. But as I said, that's a topic for a different day. Well, he did seem kind of hesitant to move up to welterweight. He takes a fight after the Ferguson fight and batters Edson Barbosa, but then he takes on a rematch with Raging Ally Aquina last December, I believe, loses a 5-round decision fight. And at that point, it was just kind of unsure where he was going. He ended up making the move, 26 years old, up to welterweight. The same thing that former lightweight champion RDA, who was his first opponent at this weight class, did just a few years ago. And as you see by the headline here, it was a failed attempt. RDA, though, since his move up to welterweight, he's been pretty successful. As I said, former lightweight champion. He ended up losing the belt to Eddie Alvarez by a 1st-round knockout back in, I believe, 2015 or 16. I think 16, actually. Then he loses a 5-round tough decision loss to Tony Ferguson. And then he makes the move up to welterweight, where he pulled off big wins over ranked contenders like Neil Magny and Robbie Lawler, former welterweight champion. And that propelled him into the top 5 of the division. So he comes into this fight ranked in number 3 in the division, and he's going to hold on to that ranking by finishing off Kevin Lee, who really didn't have any business fighting a top 5 ranked opponent at a division higher than him when he was coming off a loss in the division south of him. But nevertheless, this was a former lightweight, and RDA was coming off a loss to now champion Kamaru Usman. So apparently the UFC believed that this made sense. But he's now 29-11. He's a true veteran of the sport. I mean, he's a fighter's fighter. Very has really paid his dues. This man has 2 wins over Donald Cerrone. He's got a win over Nate Diaz. He's got a win over former UFC lightweight champion Vincent Henderson. He's got a win over former UFC welterweight champion Robbie Lawler. He's got a win over former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Pettis, who he won the belt from. So he has been a top-level guy for many years. And as you see, his only losses in like the last 6-7 years have been to Khabib Nurmagomedov by decision, a knockout to Eddie Alvarez, which he was favored to win that fight, a decision loss to Ferguson, a decision loss to Colby Covington, and a decision loss to Kamaru Usman. All those guys are the elite of the elite in their division. So hats off to RDA. I think this was like near his 30th fight inside the octagon, a former champion. And he's somebody that I think isn't as appreciated as he should be. And he continues to show that he's got a great career. But Kevin Lee, 17-5 now. He's still only 26 years old. And he did look good in this fight. He looked like he had more power. He's a phenomenal wrestler. I am a little concerned with the fact that he does revert back to that. And I don't feel like he transitions as well as what he should. I don't feel like he's still, even though his striking's got a lot better, I don't feel like he's never really hurt anybody on the feet. And he doesn't seem very confident with it. And he reverts back to his wrestling a lot. And when that shuts down, he tends to start fading. He tends to start gassing. So that's a concern for Kevin Lee at this point in his career, I believe. But he still has a solid record. He's been in the UFC a long time. And, I believe that he's got some good years ahead of him. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, though. As I mentioned, he lost to Ally Quinn and moved up to welterweight, loses to RDA. And he's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. So it's back to the drawing board for him. And this man, he was on – the worst part about Kevin Lee, that it's made it harder on him, the fact that he has been so vocal. He goes on all the talk shows. He was calling out Khabib Nurmagomedov for a long time. He got that fight with Tony Ferguson and acted like they hyped him as like the next big thing. And he's called out Conor McGregor. He was basically claiming he's the big money fight. He was trying to talk his way into big fights, and he thought he had the skills to back up his rhetoric. Well, it just isn't turning out that way right now. So it's going to be back to the drawing board. I think this period that he's going through is kind of similar to the period Cody Garbrandt's going through down at bantamweight, where they're just kind of being humbled. They're paying their dues. They're taking their L's. They're taking their licks. I think they're going to come back stronger, though. I think Kevin Lee is a good fighter, and I think he'll be back. And, one can only hope. But as you see here, RDA is still number 3 ranked in the division. So he holds his ranking. Kevin Lee is not going to get a ranking at welterweight. But going on to the co-main event, we had kind of a surprising turn of events here. Ian Heinisch pulls off a unanimous decision win over Antonio Carlos Jr. Carlos Jr. coming in ranked number 12 in the division up there at middleweight in a very stacked middleweight division. Pulls off a big win, biggest win of his career for sure. Will probably have a number next to his name, and really good wrestling. He was in some trouble going into the first round. In the first round, Carlos Jr.'s jiu-jitsu is just so good. His grappling is so technical and fluid, and he got put in a lot of bad positions. Carlos Jr. looked to be the better wrestler in the first round, was taking him down and looked stronger. It looked like it was going to be the type of fight Carlos Jr. typically wins. But Ian Heinisch showed that he's resilient. He stayed strong. He stayed in the fight. He ended up grinding out those second and third rounds. This was a pretty close fight, but I think the second and third round were decisive wins for him. But he's now on a 5-fight win streak. So I think we need to remember that name. I think he's going to be a ranked opponent after just beating Antonio Carlos Jr. So Ian Heinisch coming really out of nowhere, but Carlos Jr. still relevant, got a good record. He was coming in here on a pretty good run in the UFC. He had a 5-fight win streak, so he's still 5-1 in his last 6 fights. So he's got room for improvement, and we'll see him back. He really is a very high level black belt. And moving on, we had 2 women pick up some big wins tonight, both by Aspen Lab by unanimous decision win, and Felicia Spencer finishes Megan Anderson in the first round by rear naked choke. And Felicia Spencer is in a division up there at 145 pounds that they really don't know what to do with, because there's really just not too many 145-pound female mixed martial arts fighters in the world at a high level. And I was very impressed with her, though. Her grappling is very good. Megan Anderson's a tough girl. And honestly, what I was thinking a lot in here, because I'm just not real sold that the 45 division is going to have really anything going on for it recently, except for maybe a fight with Chris Cyborg, obviously. But I was looking at her frame and wondering if she could make 135 pounds, because I think she could be a real contender. Very heavy grappler. She looked very solid in this fight, and good grappling, and just real tree trunk legs, looked super strong. I think she's definitely a formidable contender against any woman they put her against moving forward. And Aspen Ladd, she's a young lad, young girl, and a lot of hype behind Aspen, and she's definitely moving on ahead in her career, stays undefeated, pulls off a very grueling is the right word for the MMA Junkie headline, tough win over Jar Eubanks last night, and she looked very, very good. Aspen Ladd, I think she was supposed to fight Holly Holm. That fight fell through, and I think this fight with Jar Eubanks kind of showed that would have been a little bit of a rush. But Aspen Ladd's still not even 25 years old. She's a young girl, undefeated. So we have two, I think, good contenders in that 35-45 range that are unbeaten, and picked up some solid wins tonight and gained some good experience, especially Aspen Ladd. And moving on from here, we're going to look at Felicia Spencer, as you see, 7-0. Looking really good in her career at this point. Aspen Ladd, 8-0. So both these girls have a lot of upside for them moving forward in their career. And moving on, we saw Vicente Luque get a last-minute replacement against LFA standout Derek Krantz. And Krantz came out hard in this fight. Came out and really took it to him. Fought with nothing to lose. Came out and really cracked Vicente quick. Took him down. And looked to be on the verge of really putting up a really competitive, tough fight. And Vicente ended up getting out of a bad position and just took over from there. Picked him apart with the strikes and ended up finishing him in the first round, which was predictable. Krantz fought valiantly, but Vicente is a serious top prospect at welterweight, which is already a super stacked division. But you, as you see, all in the UFC, he is 7-1 in his last 8 fights. He's looking really good. I believe he did come in, I think, ranked number 15 in the division. So moving forward, I think that we're going to see him against a top prospect going forward. He definitely deserves it. And then the final fight that I want to briefly cover is the Bronx Charles Oliveira pulls together a second-round finish of Nick Lentz. This was the third time that these two have been matched up and fought together. Charles Oliveira has the all-time UFC submission record, has more submissions inside the octagon than any other fighter, and he's really on a good run lately. He's always been one of those guys that has had some hiccups. I think he's been an underachiever, in my opinion. He's got good striking. He's got excellent jiu-jitsu, one of the best finishers inside the promotion, really. And still pretty young in his career. And I definitely think that moving forward, he's got a lot of upside. He's now on a 5-fight win streak. So he look out for Charles Oliveira going forward. He's looking really good. And Yeah, I think he came in ranked number 15 at lightweight as well. So I think we're going to see more of him moving forward, fighting some tough level guys. I thought it was kind of funny that Paul Felder was interviewing him in the post fight in the ring, because Paul Felder's the last loss he had. Paul Felder knocked him out against the cage and guard with some elbows. So I thought that was I found humor in that. It's cool that they're able to be men and be civil, and I like that about the fight game. But Charles Oliveira, like I said, I believe he's always been an underachiever, and I think he looked really good in this fight. And anytime that hits the mat, if he wraps up a neck, he can choke you unconscious, and he can finish the fight. And he showed in this fight he can finish you on the feet too, because he dropped Nick Lentz with a nice shot. And this guy's just a born finisher. He's not even 30 years old yet. I think the best Charles Oliveira is yet to come. I think the cut down to 145 pounds wasn't good for him, and I think we'll see much better performance of him in the future. And I mean, this guy's been in there against Frankie Edgar and Max Holloway, and just great guy. I mean, he's not losing to chumps, and I think we'll see him performing even better. I think he's going to continue to mature, and we're going to continue to see the development of this guy, and he'll be one of those that blossoms a little bit later in his career, I believe. But as for that, that's the wrap up of UFC on ESPN Plus 10. We're actually getting a week off of the UFC for once, which is kind of a type of feeling for us, because trying to cover a card every week, it gets kind of demanding, and it takes a lot of Saturday nights of fights and stuff. And the UFC's got a very busy schedule now, so them taking a week off from Memorial Day weekend, I think is a good thing, and I'm looking forward to it. And then we got a great summer coming up. I mean, we're going to come back in June, at the beginning of June, with Alexander Gustafsson fighting Anthony Smith, two former title contenders against John Jones. They're fighting in Sweden, and for a fight night. And then we got an excellent pay-per-view. This next UFC 238 pay-per-view in Chicago was with the vacant bantamweight title on the line between Marlon Moraes and Henry Cejudo. And we got it announced that Tony Ferguson's going to be fighting Donald Cerrone, which is just a fan's dream. We got Valentina on the same card defending her belt against Jessica Ai, and fights, up-and-coming bantamweight contender fights between Pedro Munoz and Aljamain Sterling, and Petr Yan and Jimmy Rivera. And we got a big strawweight contender fight between Tatiana Suarez taking on I apologize. Tatiana Suarez taking on Nina Ansaroff. They came to me. Taking on Nina Ansaroff in a big strawweight clash. The winner of that could fight Jessica Andrade next, especially if Rose is really going to take some time off or even completely walk away, and they're not going to give it to Joanna. So we could see, I mean, that card's got 7 very great fights. And then after that, I mean, it just gets better. I mean, the International Fight Week card at the beginning of July, the pay-per-view after that, we got John Jones defending his belt against Thiago Santos. We got Holly Holm challenging Amanda Nunes for her bantamweight title, Junior Dos Santos versus Francis Ngannou, Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. I mean, and then after that, we got heavyweight title fights coming up in August with the rematch between Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. And it announced that Nate Diaz is going to be fighting Anthony Pettis. And it announced that Max Holloway is going to be fighting Frankie Edgar for the featherweight title. So I'm not going to sit and rant about everything, but there's a lot coming up. It's going to be a great summer if everybody can make it into the cage. We're going to be covering it here on the CRP. And we're growing. We're getting better. Got to start somewhere. All of us are really trying to buckle down, try to stay on top of things, stay informed about what's going on, bring you good information, and support us as we grow. We're gonna make some improvements here shortly. in our quality and in our outreach, because we believe that we are covering things from a past, present, and looking forward to the future point of view that we're proud of, and we're looking to make it better. And if you have any recommendations, please let us know. But one thing you can do that doesn't cost you anything, just takes you a few moments, like our Facebook page, hit like on this video, even share our page, make recommendations. If you have not liked our YouTube page, because we have more followers on Facebook at the moment than we do on our YouTube page, please go and like our YouTube page if you have an account. Leave a comment, hit the like button, view our material, and we appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time. I'll have Miguel back with me. Chad's wanting to come back and start getting in there. He's been really busy. He's the one who made all this happen. Miguel and Anthony are always covering boxing and breaking all these fights down, and we're gonna keep up with this. So stay tuned to the Cage Rage podcast, and I will talk to you next time.